Good morning. We're going to get started. It's a public hearing of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 190152, 190153, 190154, and resolution number 190164. Mr. Stitt, please read the titles of the bills and resolution.
Bill number 190152, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2020 through 2025 inclusive. Bill number 190153, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2020 capital budget. Bill number 190154, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2020. Resolution number 190164, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2020 through 2024 and incorporating proposed changes with respect to fiscal year 2019, which is to be submitted by the Mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, the authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement, authorized by an ordinance of this Council, approved by the Mayor on January 3, 1992, Bill number 1563-A, by and between the City and the authority.
Thank you, Mr. Stitt. And today we continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal 2020, a capital program, and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal 2020 through fiscal 2025. Today we will hear testimony from the following city departments: the Chief Administrative Office of Innovation and Technology, Procurement, and Human Resources. Mr. Stitt, the first person to testify is?
Christine Darnick Lopez.
Thank you very much. Please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, President Clark and members of City Council. I'm Christine Darnick Lopez, Chief Administrative Officer. Joining me today is Dwayne Gordon, First Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, and Stephanie Tipton, Chief of Staff. I am pleased to provide testimony on the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer's Fiscal Year 2020 operating budget. In fiscal year 2020, the Office of the Chief Administrative Office, or CAO for short, is making significant investments in enterprise-wide projects that advance the city's goal of ensuring government runs efficiently, effectively, and always with integrity. These investments also reflect our office's focus on people, processes, and modernizing city operations. I'd like to take a moment to highlight one such project, the new Phila.gov website. In FY20, our Office of Digital Transformation will continue to support the rollout of the new Phila.gov platform, the city's digital front door where residents can find information about city services, programs, and initiatives. The new Phila.gov platform, which was launched in the beginning of FY19, is designed to be user-friendly, accessible from any device, and written in plain language. The CAO is excited to be at the forefront of leading enterprise-wide change and innovation through these and other initiatives. We will continue to support other city departments as they engage in projects aimed at providing city services more efficiently, more effectively, and with a customer service focus. You have my full written testimony. My team and I are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My kind of testimony, brief and to the point. I have a couple of questions. In your testimony, you highlight the plans to increase the speed of vendor pay, and I think that's important because consistently you hear a lot of individuals, particularly smaller companies that contractors that may want to do business with the city, but the whole issue about getting the invoices reviewed and getting paid at the end of the day eliminates or prohibits them from getting engaged. What exactly are we doing to deal with that issue?
Yep.
And what's the current speed for a small contractor or any type of contractor to get paid?
Yep. So we've taken kind of a multi-pronged approach. We started with contracts and really making processing of contracts more efficient because vendors can't get paid without a conformed contract. So we launched DocuSign and ePay and things like that. We have successfully reduced the contract conformance time in between 25 and 50%. So that's been the first phase. We're now moving into the second phase, which is the invoicing, and I'm going to have Dwayne Gordon, the first deputy who's leading that project for the city, talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
The first deputy, Dwayne Gordon. So we are close to rolling out a pilot to address the slow pay for vendors. And so what we did was took a look across the entire enterprise at the different departments to see how they were individually handling the process as far as processing the invoices. We've worked with the departments, finance, controller's office, the treasury department to create process maps as far as current state and future state. Because we did not have a baseline across the enterprise as far as determining how much time it's going to take to pay vendors, with this pilot, we're going to establish a baseline of 60 days. And so we're going to measure that and monitor that. And so once we see progress, we'll decrease it down to 30 days. And so when this pilot rolls out, we're going to start off with 2 departments, IT and streets department. And as we see progress, we'll continue to roll other departments on throughout the year.
Okay. That tie. I like that tie. Man.
I appreciate it. I got the memo.
Thank you. Can you tell me the difference between the Chief Administrative Office and the functions of the Human Resources? It kind of seems like there should be some overlap.
So there is a lot of overlap. And we work very closely with OHR. I'm also the interim HR director right now, so we're working even more closely. And so the CIO's office has HR and talent, and so that's where recruitment functioning is happening, the intern programs, the career empowerment fair, things like that. And then OHR is responsible for all the health and welfare benefits, and obviously all the civil service hiring. So we've created some synergies between recruitment and civil service hiring. Rec leader trainees, one of those examples, where we've created a project team with HR&T, OHR, and the department, and we're approaching it from a cradle to grave hiring function, and we're really seeing some great results with that. We've also done it with School Crossing Guard, and so these are just the beginning projects. We're looking to continue to build them out some more as we continue on this journey.
Okay. This is one from my crew. In your testimony, you highlight the plans to increase the speed of hiring employees, and anecdotally, we have heard of highly qualified non-civil service employees not hearing back after submitting an application. And in a lot of instances, these people are willing to take a pay cut from the private sector because they want to work for the city. But eventually they've taken jobs elsewhere because of, according to the people that I've heard from, the lack of responsiveness. Can you tell me, one, what are we doing to reach out to highly qualified employees in a timely manner, and what's our response is, or do we feel any obligation to let that person know that that position has been filled, or just kind of like leave them hanging? Or what's that process in terms of follow-up?
So generally with exempt positions, we use smart recruiters. And so when those positions are filled, there's generally an email response that goes out. And then with civil service, we use another system, People Admin. And we use a system that also sends an electronic notification. Perhaps people are feeling it's impersonal, which I completely appreciate. But there's such a high volume. That's about, I think, as best as we can do right now.
So it's too many people that have applied to just let them know, thank you for your inquiry, position has been filled.
Essentially. I mean, it's a little bit.
But don't we already have their names in the system?
Yes, the system will trigger. So when you make your appointment, so say I hire Stephanie, everyone that applied will get an email. And it's generally.
Yeah, but I'm saying.
We've
Can't
hired,
we just like say the position's been filled?
Yes.
How long does that take?
It takes several months usually because most, for exempt positions, we require a diverse hiring slate and a diverse interview panel, so it does take a few months to go through a process.
No, I'm not talking about that. So, say 100 people apply for a position, maybe
Okay.
it's more, whatever. All right, so we have those people in our system, and as we go through the process, we hire one. Those people are already in the system. How difficult is it to just send out a response. Thank you for your inquiry. The position has been filled, so they can move on with their life, as opposed to waiting and waiting and waiting. And I hear this not just in these exempt, highly qualified. I just hear this generally from people. Say, I'm waiting for the city. I say, well, how long has it been?
Okay.
And they are, hey, Councilman Clark, can you call me and call somebody and make sure I get the job? Obviously, I can't get engaged in civil service, but that doesn't stop them from asking.
Yeah.
But in the case where there's these particular categories, is it that difficult to send out?
Yeah, so the civil service jobs are a little bit challenging and something we're thinking through. So the way the civil service regs read is you're on an eligible list for 2 years. So we are trying to think through how we can increase our engagement to keep people apprised of how we're moving through the list. So labor list, for example. You could be number 1,000 and maybe they're up to 250. So we are trying to think through ways through the system to send mass updates to folks, because that list will last for 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Yeah, that is feedback that we've heard as well, and we are trying to think that through a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you share with us what the relationship or interface might be with your office and the office of the broader issue? Share with me what your engagement might be around diversity and inclusion across government, and especially the Free Library.
Yep, so we partner very closely with Nolan Atkinson, the Chief Diversity Officer. So monthly, we meet with Nolan and his team to talk through diversity issues. Through that partnership, we've been able to establish some best practices that we've implemented for exempt hiring, the diverse hiring.
For exempt hiring?
For exempt hiring, yes.
Okay, so stop right there. That's a lot of information. And so once you develop those best practices, I imagine you reduce them to writing. And what happens after that? How do those leaders of major departments, including the Free Library, get that information so that they can implement what the mayor's vision is?
So we created a playbook, actually. And not only did we create a playbook, we also held a training session for all HR leaders across the government. So that included every city agency.
So the Free Library has their own HR department?
They do.
Okay, and do you know if they attended those trainings?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get that information.
If you could please, and so that's an option, or is that a requirement of HR professionals across the government?
So I believe that training was when Jackie Linton was leading it, and I believe that was mandatory training.
Okay, and so then what happens after that?
So then we have an expectation that there's always a diverse hiring slate. So the interview shouldn't be scheduled unless there's a diverse hiring slate, and then a diverse hiring panel, and then we go through the process.
And that's for each organization in government?
Yes, that's happening for all exempts across government.
For all exempts?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And so at some point over the last couple of years, there was discussion that for department heads or those who lead major organizations in government, for those who don't get the vision and implement what Mayor Kinney has been trying to appoint us with, what happens?
So there is a conversation. I mean, I think most of the operating departments don't have a lot of exempt appointments. Most of them are probably civil service, I would think. So that is a little bit more challenging. And so what we haven't partnered with the library yet, but we have been in discussions with them for their entry-level librarian position. What we've done with Rec Leader Trainee, for example, is Catherine, the commissioner, is very committed to ensuring her workforce represents the communities that the recreation department serves. So as I mentioned, we did a project plan. And we included Chris Nelson, who's our talent acquisition manager, who I have to give a shout out, he's amazing. We stole him from Drexel. And we built a program because a lot of millennials and Gen Z, they are finding out about job opportunities online. So we did a lot of testimonials. We posted on LinkedIn and through social media, and videos. I mean, that's how today's workforce engages.
Meet prospective employees where they are.
Yep. So we're pleased to, from that work, we were able to increase out of the approved applicants, we were able to have half of the applicants were diverse. So that's never happened before, so we feel like that worked. So we're looking to engage the library, who we have been in conversations about their entry-level librarian position, to also go through a similar strategy with them.
How long ago was that?
So it was maybe 2 months ago we talked to them. We're in the process. They have a national conference that they test at, but they'll also be testing in Philadelphia. So we're just starting to ramp up those conversations now.
I see. So as a FYI, you should be advised that President Clark has requested that the Free Library report back to us at a date I don't remember.
Okay.
And my ask would be that you or members of your team sit with them prior to them reporting back to us so that they can incorporate some of these best practices that you've spoken to, since their academic grade for diversity and inclusion would be an F. Okay?
Yep, we'd be happy to. We'd
All
be
right
happy
then.
to. We have a lot of resources. Chris has identified 10 separate diverse websites that he recruits to. We have a monthly community leader outreach strategy. So we've done a lot, and we're happy to leverage his expertise in other areas.
Please. Thank
Happy
you.
to. Thank you.
Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, I
Thank you,
appreciate that.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. April the 30th is the date
Oh,
that the
okay.
Councilwoman referenced.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Don.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just a couple of quick questions. I noticed in your budget from 18 to this new budget, the budget's gone up about 28%. 5894 to 7588 on page 3, looks like, roughly, at the top. And what would you say the big increase is really from 19 to 20? What's happening? Why are we hiring, like, we have 61 positions right now, and you're asking for 76. So you're asking for 15 more, or about 25% more positions. What would they do?
So 7 of those positions are on the Phila.gov project team. They are funded through capital, because that's a capital funded project. We're moving them onto operating. So that's 7 of those positions. 2 of those positions, with the increased need for recruitment, Chris Nelson's only one person, and so he's been doing it primarily for exempts, and we see a need to do it for civil service. So one of the assistant CAOs is going to be specifically for civil service recruitment, and then another analyst is going to be supporting our HR team and all of the project work and all the change management going on there.
And so what do you think the average salary is of those positions?
I'm going to ask Stephanie to see if she could help me with that.
Our average salary is probably around $60,000.
60?
60,
Okay.
yeah, 60 to 70,000, I would say.
But keep in mind, I just want to make sure you're aware of this. When you hire for $60,000, you have 88 cents of fringe benefits, and according to the finance department, 33 cents of overhead. So when you add 33 and 88, that 60 becomes over 120, like 130,000. I'm only saying that so that when you look at these hires, you make sure you say to yourselves, is this worth $130,000? Because that's the hit to the budget.
No, I appreciate that.
The other question, I just had a general question. In 18, under page 3 of your budget, I guess, you had purchase of services, category 200. It seems to have gone up a lot from 18 to 19. Can you refresh my memory as to why it went up so much?
Hi, Stephanie again. We had a temporary increase in our budget to account for the parking amnesty program that our office was implementing. It was a $1.5 million expenditure, and then in FY19 that was reduced back out of our budget.
Okay. The other question I had is, your testimony mentions the Discover Benefits Project to help residents learn about the various housing-related assistance programs.
Yep.
Could you explain those programs and when this project's going to be active?
So I'm going to let Dwayne Gordon respond to that.
Dwayne Gordon, First Deputy. So I think back in 2017, the city was engaged in the Bloomberg Challenge, and one of the submissions was the Philly One Form project. Was going to look at the 32 housing-related projects or programs to see if they can create one project. And so the city did not win that grant, and so it kind of fizzled out. And so when I came on board, I picked it up. And so, of course, we didn't have the $1.2 million. And so we had to change the scope of the project to make it more iterative. And so as a result of that, we are taking a more thoughtful and measured approach to it. And so what we're looking to do is still do the same thing, but we're going to look to include a tech solution for this. And so with that tech solution, we're thinking that by the summer, we should have that in place. And so we should be able to roll out something in a pilot type fashion.
And so what will be the benefit to the residents? What's the end game?
So for one, from the citizens' perspective, so if you were looking to apply for any particular housing-related program, you would go and apply for it. If you wanted to try another one, you have to resubmit all your information again. So this happens over and over and over again. And so what we're saying is that they would only have to submit their information one time. So it speeds up the process as far as approval, but it also increases efficiency internally, right? So at that point, we were able to process a lot more applications. And so we should see a reduction in time and a reduction in expenses as far as across the entire program. But also what this project does is it allows us to capture metrics across the board that we're not able to do right now. So we can look at the programs and understand engagement. We can look at participation. We can look at declination. We can look at a lot of different things, and we can make more intelligent decisions as far as keeping programs or introducing new programs.
So give me 2 or 3 examples of housing-related assistance programs that this will touch.
I think that Loop is one of them.
So is UPA involved too?
Who?
UPA, Owner-Occupied Payment Agreement?
I think that's one of them.
And the senior program, would that be a part of it?
It will be.
And so then my other question is, can you also include some of the benefits we have to fill out, like EITC forms? Can that be added in?
So it could be possibly. So what we're doing is we're going to explore everything. So we're going to look at all the different forms. We're going to look at all the different programs across the city. The reason we're starting with these housing-related programs is just because that was what was originally scoped out. So at this point, pretty much everything is on the table as we progress through this.
I would give this suggestion. Since we still leave $100 million in Washington that 40,000 residents qualify for, wherever we can get out the word on the earned income tax credit, I would incorporate it as much as you possibly can.
Absolutely.
Okay. I have another question. Why doesn't the Office of Administrative Review, or have you ever thought about this, get involved in handling the property assessment appeals?
I'll let Melissa Andre, who's Executive Director for OAR, address that.
Melissa Andre, Executive Director, Office of Administrative Review. Good morning. Per the regulations, the Office of Administrative Review and the Tax Review Board is only allowed to hear interest and penalties for real estate cases. We hear the principal for other kinds of tax matters like refuse or business tax matters, but unfortunately, the statutes are very clear about, The statutes are very clear that the Tax Review Board can only hear interest and penalties, and the exclusive jurisdiction for principal matters for the Office of, for the principal resides with the OPA. So unfortunately, we cannot touch it.
So let me just make sure I understand. You handle the interest and penalties, OPA handles the principal?
Correct.
It might be more efficient if we had one entity handling both, though, wouldn't it?
Well, with all respect, and I know what that really means, but unfortunately, OPA has the ability to look at tax assessments as a whole, and they are the ones who are tasked with going out, seeing what the properties look like, and looking at the rest of the city in terms of taxes and all the other factors that go into it. My office is just charged with allowing people the opportunity to explain themselves and request abatements for interest and penalties, especially when we know that over years that could be more and almost half as much as the principal that's due. And OPA has a whole set of circumstances and regulations that kind of direct them how to come up with the tax assessments. So we try to be as helpful as possible and refer people to OPA all the time, but most of the time they've already exceeded their appeal period there, and so coming to us is to really come up with a way to pay the taxes that are due.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes, before I do that, Councilman Don brought up an issue about, one of the things that you talked about is highlighting and referencing things online of all the various housing-related programs. We're going to get into another shameless plug. I take the liberty of doing this. We did this document, City Council, narrowing the gap. Remember that? All right.
I do.
And one of the things that we focus on, particularly relating to the social safety net, we talked about the city essentially referencing all programs and cross-promoting programs as opposed to going to every agency to find out what benefits that people are eligible for and access. So can you all review this if you haven't already done so? That portion of the benefits, and it includes the things that Councilman Dom referenced, to see, make sure that we can have all of these various programs on a one-stop shop initiative, because that's important.
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Yeah, that
So
would be really-
just to add on to that, that's exactly what we're doing. That's part of the entire scope, is to start with the housing-related programs, but look across the entire enterprise, whether it's health-related, social services, whatever, and see how they can roll into this program. But more importantly, what this project is going to do is allow us to look at the data and the information more strategically so that the city can become more proactive as far as engagement.
It's not just city, though, because I'm talking about state and federal.
Yep.
We can do that.
Yep.
All right. Okay, that'll be very helpful, because that gets us to a point where we need to do. And my assumption that all this information will be available at the city's library, so, because a big part of the problem, particularly people in this particular category in poverty, they don't have access to the internet. So we can make sure, if you guys can work with not only the libraries, but the community schools, because that's a big component that we're going to be promoting, that people can go to community schools, they can go to libraries, and even rec centers, to access this information.
Yep.
Can we do that? All right,
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Kiona Sanchez.
Thank you. Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
Just for clarity purpose, you said the conformance contracting, you had to decrease it by 50 days. So how many days? Because I know initially our goal was to get it down from 110. So how many days?
So we've reduced it between 25 and 50%. So when I first started looking at this, it was about 135 days. We've got it down to, about 110, 112. And
So
then
what's your goal over?
it's 90. It's
90?
to get it to 90, yeah. And then one of the other things that the contracts unit led by T.J. Williams, we just launched is an expedited contract process. So we even try to take a look at some set of RFPs, if you will, and reduce the amount of steps to even get it processed more expeditiously.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about, and I say this to the Commerce and others, we have a lot of nonprofit partners, and these are like annual contracts, and this notion that they still have to wait till December to get conformed contracts and payment is a burden sometimes on folks, right? And so these expedited contracts, are those going to be for those kind of annual renewal contracts that we have all over the place?
So as long as there's not a change in scope and not a change in the dollar amount, they do include that. They would qualify. And the steps I actually, and I know this is a stretch goal, but I actually think those contracts could get through the process in 7 days. I know it's a stretch goal, but I don't, it's pretty,
We actually force nonprofits to take out loans and stuff because without a conformed contract, then we get to the invoicing part. It's one of the biggest frustrations I have. Having come from the nonprofit world and having to manage cash flow, and the fact that the city we manage our cash flow on the backs of small nonprofit vendors.
we're happy. We have a great relationship with DHS. We're happy to meet with them. They're great partners.
No, but I'm talking across the board,
Yeah.
right? Because Commerce you have the street cleaning and the
Yep.
Carter folks,
do.
they don't have conformed contracts till December. DHS, I know again, those are annual contracts. I don't
They are.
know why we start July 1st from scratch and it's September, October for people to get a contract, to get it conformed in December, just because that's the period during the holidays is when you're getting all the calls of like, we have 5 months of invoices in and we got to get it processed and that kind of stuff. Okay, well, we'll keep working at it. And then real quick, how many, we really have been trying to encourage departments in their diversity efforts. How many departments have utilized their frontline staff in creating bilingual positions? What's the utilization rate? What departments? Anything new on that?
So I don't have the list in front of me. I can get the list to you. There are, I know in prisons, they're doing a lot of work with bilingual positions, correctional officers, firefighter, the fire department for firefighters doing a lot of work, human services. They're the ones that are, human relations. They're the departments that are standing out at the top of my head. We do have a list. I can definitely get that to you.
Okay. Yeah, if you can report that to the chair, I'd be interested to see which departments are utilizing it as a way of diversifying and really.
The rec leader trainee, we announced a bilingual specialty. And so we got some nice applicants, and we're pretty excited about that list as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. President, and hello to each of you.
Good morning.
Let me just start with a word of encouragement to Dwayne Gordon and Terrence Arthur, who led the Park and Amnesty Initiative. In addition to the PPA meeting we held, they also attended several town hall meetings and budget briefings throughout the 9th Councilmatic districts to help constituents gain access to the program. So I wanted to start by thanking them. Can you share with me how the city's wellness program is working? And it's nothing worse than developing a program that we want to benefit the city, but then you learn that it's not being utilized. So what has that participation been like?
So I'm going to ask our Deputy HR Director, Marsha Green-Jones, to come up.
And just if you will, also give us a 30-second, what is the wellness program? Because somebody's watching at home and they don't know what in the world we're talking about.
Okay. Hello, Marsha Green-Jones, Deputy Human Resources Director, responsible for health and welfare. Our wellness program, actually the purpose of it is to encourage employees to live a healthy lifestyle. And that's not only just their general health, but we believe that if employees are healthy, they actually have a better work-life balance. So one of the things we focus upon is employees actually engaging with their personal physicians by having biometric levels taken on an annual basis, completing a health risk assessment, and engaging in other wellness activities actually that are focused upon physical activity and other elements in terms of making them a whole being in terms of their wellness life. Our wellness participation actually continues to rise. So I have to say the City of Philadelphia, in terms of our employees engaging and really responding to the fact that we want to educate, because if we educate our employees, they'll be more apt to participate and engage on a better level. So our participation levels for recently were 49.3% in terms of our wellness participation rate. That means not only the employee, but their covered spouse also completed the wellness activities. The national average is 35%, so we're exceeding that national norm. For our
So the national average is what?
about 35%.
35, okay.
Yes. We also have rolled out wellness for our retirees who are participating in our health program. Their participation rate is 33.8%. We rolled this out 2 years ago, so it's growing over time, and we think that it will actually long-term give us some excellent results. So one of the things wellness also does is it manages our costs. So if people are
Right, I wanted, and I'm glad you're going there, because we hear wellness, we're higher than the national average, but the question is, how does this economically benefit the bottom line and pocketbook here in the city of Philadelphia?
Well, how it affects us, I have to say, is that we have had less employees actually hospitalized in the hospital. We've saved over $1 million in terms of that. Actually, employees are taking medications. Our generic medications, we're at 86.9% participation rate in that. In terms of our management of our specialty drug program, that is at an all-time high. We've also been able to save over $1 million in our prescription costs because employees are going to the doctors more regularly, and it's not people going to the emergency room because they haven't been compliant in terms of what their doctors have asked us to do. So overall, through all of the things that we do, whether it's a wellness program, whether it's a lunch and learn, we've had 900 employees voluntarily participate in a lunch and learn to learn about their health care program. One of the things that the mayor has, one of his pillars, is education. We believe it's important as well. When we have informed employees, they make informed decisions. So we have the wellness program, we have a newsletter that I'm sure you all see on a regular basis. We also have participated in some other programs. We recently won an innovation award through the Greater Philadelphia Business Coalition on Health regarding our approach to wellness. And our topic that we actually won the award on was about actually learning our education, how adults learn about their wellness programs. So we approached it from that perspective, and we won our innovation award as a consequence of that.
Well, so thank you for that update. That actually brings me into my next question, which is an update on progress on this efficiency work that's been occurring in OHR. There is nothing more important for us than to see whether or not, you get accustomed to doing things the way they've been done, since the beginning of time, and there's sometimes a reluctance and bureaucracy to embrace new strategies. So talk to me about our work relative to efficiency.
So thank you. So this is going to be, I think, a longer-term project, but we have seen some immediate results. We've issued a small RFP because we want to rebrand the city as an employer of choice. We think we have some great opportunities, and this is a great place to work, and we need to tell our story and tell it for folks that are in today's marketplace. So millennials and in May will be our first graduates of Generation Z. So they want to find their jobs through social media generally. And so we've done a lot more videos and posting on LinkedIn and things like that. So we want to take that a little bit further, and we want to have a common brand for every single city agency to use when they're marketing their positions. The other thing we're doing is we've identified an opportunity to really focus on the talent that the departments need and not focus as much on years of experience at X level. It's more competency-based and behavioral-based. So do you need to be a good negotiator and things like that? So we have an RFP on the street right now looking for different types of assessments. Perhaps there's video assessments or other ways other than a written multiple choice that we could assess a candidate's capability to do the job.
Versus traditional testing.
Yes.
Because we all know some people test well on standardized tests and some just don't. But that doesn't mean that they're not competent and they don't have the ability to do the work.
Exactly. So we're engaging in some pilots in that as well. The other big component, and we're bringing a consultant in to help us, is time to hire. So there's a lot of different hands that go into the hiring process. Some are in the central agency, some are in the departments. From a candidate experience, it doesn't matter, and we shouldn't expect the candidate to know where to go. It should just be seamless. So we're trying to map that out, identify the time it takes at each interval, the pain points, and then see what we can do to leverage technology and really kind of make this more of a seamless process. So just to give you, I have to talk about the rec leader training because it was such a fun project. So we redesigned the spec, the job description, we redesigned the exam.
Council President Clark talked about that yesterday during the hearing. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was great. We communicated, we increased our engagement with our candidates. We over-communicated, so the exam was last week, and we told them when they're going to get the results from the exam about where they rank on the list, and we told them when their interview is going to be scheduled.
So they know that already?
They know that already. It's May 13th, and we've worked with the department to line all of that up, and not only do we have the interview scheduled the week of May 13th, we know when they're going to get the offer letters out. So all of the raters for the exam, they received implicit bias training. So we're really trying to change the engagement and really trying to have a benefit for the city.
I know. I heard the alarm ring a bell. But when you talk about branding the city as an employer of choice, that has to be about also diversity, because you just mentioned that implicit bias training. To talk about that, welcoming, we're branded, but we want to welcome diversity and that implicit bias training.
Absolutely. So we are incorporating an inclusive lens on everything we do. So the school crossing guard, the recruitment strategy for that was a faith-based recruitment strategy and a community engagement. So we got into the schools and we worked through the faith-based network, if you will. Office clerk.
So we've already done this.
We have.
So it's highly likely, and that's a really good position to think about, because based on the work that they do and its value and them being in the elements, I would always like and appreciate it when my crossing guard actually lived in the neighborhood where they worked. So did you find that while going directly into the schools themselves, along with faith-based institutions, were you able to pull from the local pool in that neighborhood or zip code?
Yeah, and I'm going to ask Val Hosendorf, who's the Deputy over Hiring Services, who's doing an amazing job leading the change. So I just want to ask Val to come up too. So we don't have the list yet, but we were able to get over 1,400 applications. So
is that high for this?
It's really good. Mm-hmm. It's really good. I'm sorry, Val.
Good morning. Valerie Hosendorf, Deputy Director of Hiring Services. So thank you for that question. So we're excited about this, and the way the certification process was going with school crossing guards, it was a little challenging for that department. And so with our team, we decided to work with them to be more strategic. So they're allowed to, when they apply for the exam, they're allowed to say, I would like to work in this district. To your point, it's typically near where they work. And of course, where they live. And of course, sometimes certain districts have more candidates than others, and so then the department is a little challenged. And so we work with them with a strategy to reach out to folks who may not live exactly in that district, but nearby, so that they can have an opportunity. And so for this exam, we actually offered the candidates an opportunity to give us 3 places where you might like to work, where it could be close to you, or maybe you have a car and you want to go to different places, because we want to be able to hire as many school crossing guards as possible. And so that's been very helpful, and we're getting a lot of folks coming back, because the application that's going on now, I think we just finished, right? So we have a large application pool. We also wanted to make sure there were no barriers, because as we're doing a lot of investigation and research, we find out sometimes there's no-shows or people who apply and then there's some place where they fall off. So one of the barriers we thought was that written exam, as you guys mentioned before. So we took that away with the agreement with the police. So there's no written exam. So it's just the ability to read and write English, and we're really excited about that, because now almost everyone in those neighborhoods will be eligible to be a school crossing guard.
Well, listen, thank you for sharing that information, because what that means is that from an assessment perspective, we paid attention to a barrier to entry, to access to the opportunity to work for the city of Philadelphia in that capacity. We observed it. It was, again, actually the testing, and just because I don't test well, it doesn't mean that I don't have the ability to perform the job. So, listen, thank you for sharing that. I know my time's up, Madam Chair, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Val.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Councilman Dom?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning still. A few more questions I just wanted to ask. I wanted to follow up on Council President Clark and Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez's questions, but I just would like to know a specific time frame. If I apply for a job with the City of Philadelphia today, when will I hear?
So time to hire is a big challenge in the city government right now, which is why we have a consultant coming in to help us with that process. It is very juxtaposed, and it goes through many different touch points. And right now, we are not able to collect the true amount of time at every touch point, to be transparent. So we know labor, because that is, the streets department does track intimately that hiring process. We know that for a laborer, it's a little over 6 months. Clearly not acceptable.
When you say labor, what are you referring to when you say labor?
If you, the majority of our laborers work for the streets department sanitation, and so there are trash.
It takes 6 months.
Yes, and it's not acceptable, and we know that, which is why we have some external help coming to help us think that through and to automate some of the processes. It's like 6 months and 8 days, actually.
Did you see the report done by the Pew organization on our hiring process?
Yes, we have it.
Okay. And, I don't understand how somebody could wait 6 months for a job.
So we don't disagree with you, which is why we're completely all in and completely engaged in improving this. The rec leader trainee, what we just went through, it took us about 3 months, but our engagement was so high with the candidates, we think the experience is going to feel differently. Some of the teams and under Val's leadership, they've just really done some awesome work. One of the exams, they actually asked the candidates for their time they want to come and take the exam, whether they prefer morning or afternoon, and that resulted in over an 80% show rate. So we're trying to increase the engagement. And this is before we know what the actual process and the pain points are.
Have we looked at other cities similar to us to see what they're doing that we could possibly duplicate?
So we have the Pew report did a nice job at benchmarking, so we have a lot of that information, and we do have relationships with other cities that we've been talking to. We're hoping the consultant could help us with a lot of that as well.
What is the goal, you think? What's realistic?
So, I would love 90 days. That would be awesome. I think the challenge that we're going to have to think through is the 2-year list. And so, how do we continue the engagement? Because while maybe we're not going to be able to get to number 9,000 on the list, maybe we realistically can get to 1,500. That's the thing. We're just going to have to be a little bit more strategic about it.
3 months sounds long to me.
I've worked in corporate, and I don't think 3 months is that crazy. No. I've seen 3 months is, it's about the engagement and having the touch points, and we have the technology right now to do that. So we just.
I'm trying to understand what is the holdup in hiring somebody? Like, they take a test. I assume you're running credit reports, you can run those in 5 seconds. Probably running police checks or criminal checks. What else is the holdup here? Interviews with people? That could be done in a week.
So scheduling is always a challenge. Indebtedness check. We started unpacking this process, and the indebtedness check is a big barrier. We're piloting.
What was that called?
Indebtedness check. So do you owe taxes? Do you owe parking tickets? Things like that.
Yeah, but we have now a bill that we passed here that you have to have a tax clearance certificate. Wouldn't that be the same type of check?
That is some of the things we're looking at. Exactly. That is exactly what some of the things we're looking at.
But you don't have to wait months for that.
We agree with you. We are in agreement. And
should
we're
be-
starting to unpack that now.
I think you got to rip this all apart and just make it simple. It's too complicated. Really, this is insane. I'll sit with you for an hour, we can get this resolved. It's crazy. So I would like to see us change our goal to 30 days. I don't think it's fair to ask people to wait 3 months in order to get hired by the city of Philadelphia. I really don't.
Well, and so when are you starting your 3 months? Because I'm starting at time of application.
I'm starting mine at time of application, and the
And you have
interview
the
could...
exam.
How long does the exam take?
The exam process, because you have to post it for 2 weeks, that's in the regulations, and go through, you have notifications, and there's some requirements there, so it's about 8 weeks.
Maybe those regulations need to be changed.
That is something we're going to look at.
So
We're unpacking
I'm sure any
everything.
one of us here would be happy to introduce those changes, because the process is too cumbersome.
You're not hearing an argument out
I
of
know.
any of the HR team. We are all on board.
Because everyone who comes here has trouble filling positions
Mm-hmm.
because of the time. We're hurting ourselves.
Yeah, we agree.
Okay. And then the other question is, if I'm a contractor, I'm going to follow up with what my colleagues have said, what is my expectation if I finish my job today and I submit a bill to the city of Philadelphia today, April 16th? Is today the 16th? Yeah. When will I get paid?
If everything is in order,
Please give your name for the
I'm
record.
sorry, Dwayne Gordon, First Deputy. If everything is in order, the contractor can get paid within 30 days. And we see that when everything is in order on a consistent basis. It's when there's, missing items, there are questions. So when that happens, the time as far as payment, it varies.
How do we handle that? Because I will say, I think if you were to pick up the phone and call the vendor or the contractor and say to them, hey, listen, you want to get paid, we need to get this resolved. Probably in 24 hours, they'll resolve it because they want to get paid.
Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't.
What are the issues that are holdups to get vendors paid?
It varies from where there's some issues or questions around the purchase order. It varies from internal issues where there might be some people out of the office for an extended period of time. It's just all over the place. I mean, yeah.
My experience-
Sometimes it's with the vendors and sometimes it's with us internally. So.
Okay. I think my time's up. Keep going?
Continue with this line of questioning, and then I have.
Okay. So normally it's 30 days, but when there's hiccups, it could be 60 days maybe?
If everything is in place, it could be paid within 30 days consistently, but we're not seeing that across the board. So the vast majority, I would say, probably are not paid within 30 days. The city does not have a time standard as far as, we will get it done within 60 or 90 days, whatever. That's the purpose of the vendor payment project. And so we're streamlining that process so that we can roll it out and have vendors paid within 60 days, with the ultimate goal being down to 30 days.
Because, if you're a vendor and you know it's going to take longer to get paid, you're going to charge us more money.
Right. So one of the things that we are working on is vendor education, right? And so we have a lot of vendors that they just package up their invoices and submit it to whichever department that they're friendly with. So our internal staff, it takes them about 30 to 35% of their time just to sort through all these invoices every single day. And so once that happens, those invoices are then routed to the right department, and then that process, takes off from there. So, but the process actually starts when they submit that packet in, right? And so when you say, what issues do we have, that's a main issue, right? So we're not only going to address internal, but we're going to look at the vendors and educate them as well.
When someone contracts with the city, do you give them a form or a contract that they sign that basically says, in order to get paid by the city, these are the following items we require?
So we've created a checklist, a vendor checklist and an internal checklist. And part of that is listing out exactly what you just said. Everything must be a part of that packet. And we're going to implement strict rules that when that's submitted, if one document is not there, it's to be rejected. because that's part of the holdup. If something is not there, it goes through the process. So by the time it makes it to finance or the controller's office, it goes all the way back to the beginning, right? And so with the checklist, there's greater adherence at that point, and we can actually measure that.
Is this process done by paper, moving around the city?
A lot of it is done by paper. There are some vendors that have a level of sophistication where they can do it digitally. So we are moving away from paper and having it done electronically.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. The question I put here in response to Councilman Don's line of questioning is technical assistance. So I heard you say that you have an internal checklist for vendors?
Correct.
Okay. And so operating on a philosophy, you can't hold people responsible for that which they don't know. In what ways are you arming vendors with the requisite information they need to meet the criteria at the door?
So when we roll this out, we are working with two departments, OIT and the Streets Department.
Okay.
And so part of that is going to be the communication to the vendor.
And how does that happen?
So we would email the information to the vendor.
I see.
And so we have individuals that have agreed to work with us in the Streets Department and within OIT to work with those vendors to get them acclimated to this new way. And so we will measure that as far as adherence and so forth. And then that way we can take corrective actions where needed.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been on board?
About a year and a half.
I see. To the Chief Officer Chief Administrative Officer, you've spoken well to the diversity and inclusion trainings that you're having across the government. Update us, if you will, on the mandatory sexual harassment training, which was authored by my office.
Yep. So I think I'm going to ask Tracy Bryant to come up and speak a little bit about that. Tracy's from the HR and Talent team, and we're partnering with the Mayor's Office of Labor Relations, and she's leading the sexual harassment training.
Okay.
There you go.
Hello, Tracy Bryant, Deputy Director of Talent Management in HR and Talent. So we've been working with the Mayor's Office of Labor Relations and pretty much getting them set up for the training for sexual harassment prevention with the city. And how we set it up, we divided the training into employee groups. So we have a plan for how we'll deal with new hires, then how we deal with the executive training, then how we train the HR managers, then the managers and supervisors, and then also the rest of the employees with e-learning.
Okay. How far down the road are we?
We're actually on schedule, and
Very good.
we have we have established new hire training with our centralized onboarding program. We also have trained the entire executive leadership team, including the mayor himself. We've also completed our HR managers and professionals training. They've received training on conducting investigations. And then now we are moving towards managers and supervisors, training them. And then next up will be the e-learning.
Okay, I might add parenthetically that the mayor was very pleased that he just completed his training last week on the same day that we celebrated Teal Day, which is a celebration of Domestic Violence Month. So thank you for that. How do you share that information with the City Controller's Office and the work the monitoring work that they do in this area?
So we periodically meet with the City Controller's Office. The sexual harassment prevention is being led by the Mayor's Office of Labor Relations, so Employer Labor Relations. So generally, they're the contact, and then we're supporting them through the training work.
I see.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if during Med Week, when the focus is on MBE, WBEs for the region, has your office ever offered a workshop
on what Councilman Dom has spoken to, how the city's strategies, the city's methodology for payment to vendors. Have you ever had a chance to participate in that way so you can arm these MBE, WBEs with what our systems are, and then they know how to approach dealing with our government?
So we're very active with MedWeek. We partner with IOLA.
Okay.
We host the Open for Business event.
Mm-hmm.
And
Is that
then,
the one at the airport?
Nope, that's the one at the Horticultural Center.
Okay.
So OEO does the opening ceremonies, and then you go into the next room, Open for Business. That's the CIO's office that does that in partnership with OEO. And then Procurement Department also hosts a workshop, but I think your idea about Dwayne hosting a workshop on vendor payment is a great idea for this year in October.
So one of the things that we did this past engagement was we actually had focus groups. And so we were in the middle of formulating this project, and so we actually invited several vendors out to get their thoughts, concerns, pain points, gaps, as far as with the process. And we got a lot of great information, and that's what helped us build out this project even more.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll continue to engage them in focus group type sessions, and we'll utilize MedWeek to do that as well.
Okay, then. My last question, back to the one issue I care about more than anything else, besides arts and culture and hospitality and tourism, diversity and inclusion. How far down the road are we with the training that you're offering to department heads, and then what is the method by which you monitor to see how well department heads are doing with what the mayor has articulated?
So that work is being led by Nolan Atkinson. So
okay, so what's the interface between what he does and what your office does?
So, Nolan is such a thought leader in this space. I think we all feel like we work for him, which is awesome, right? So we're doing a lot of work on diversity and inclusion training. So part of the e-learning, we're trying to incorporate some of that from an e-learning platform, and that's about reach, but also the implicit bias training. We have a lot of, what's Nefertiti's project? Social equity grant work that we're doing, both in HR as well as in contracts. So a lot of the work is organic, and it's project work.
Is it still too early to have a measuring stick to see? Because training is important, training is necessary, training has value. At some point, you have to hold leaders accountable for not honoring and implementing what training provides for them.
So Nolan meets with us quarterly, and as part of our quarterly meetings, we go over our progress, and we talk through strategies about...
Which departments don't get it? Do you talk about that?
We do not talk about that. Because Nolan meets with individual departments. So I can speak to my meeting with Nolan. What strategies do we work on that could possibly be leveraged in other departments? And then where we're having challenges, and asking Nolan for some ideas and some potential strategies about how we could do a better job.
Okay.
And Nolan meets every quarter with every single department head.
So then, is it fair to say that then he is the arbiter, if you will, of those departments that have figured it out and those departments that are moving like snails?
I think Nolan does a really good job at holding us all accountable. Again, I can only speak for me personally, but he's very committed, and he's really pushed on CAO to come up with strategies and ideas. I mean, the 10 recruitment list, the playbook, the best practice research we did to get us where we are, that was really Nolan driving that.
Okay.
And so that's the sexual harassment training. I mean, Nolan really keeps us engaged and holds us accountable.
Very well. Thank you all very, very much for your testimony. Forgive me, Councilman Dom, you have another question.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few more questions, not too many more.
Okay.
Just curious, these are just minor questions, but the time between notification of the hearing date varies. Like red light camera tickets is 5 weeks in your report, and all other types is 4 months. Any way to speed up that 4 months?
So I'm going to ask Melissa Andre. Here she is.
Thank you.
Hello again, Melissa Andre, Executive Director, Office of Administrative Review. So The difference between the red light camera and the tax review board is that they're being run by different departments. The tax review board is an internal on-site where petitioners come in, they could email, they could literally physically hand in petitions, and we process them on-site on our system, and then we schedule them. The earliest we can do is actually 3 to 4 months, because we've already scheduled. For instance, today we've scheduled for June already. So if you were to come in, you wouldn't be able to have a hearing until July at the earliest, and we take them as they come. So if people have come before that, they'll probably get an August hearing. And so when I first started back in July of 2017, that time frame was closer to 7 months. So I was able to get that down to we schedule, and additionally, we also started to put out our schedule a little bit earlier. So this gives people more time. This also gives the Department of Revenue and the Law Department more time to reach out to petitioners to come up with settlements, so that way the hearings don't take forever. A lot of these matters have been settled before they actually come to the hearing.
So it's the backlog that's creating the delay?
It's at this moment, there's no backlog. At this moment, if you were to come in, you'd probably get a July or August hearing, because that's the earliest hearing you could get. Because again, we've already scheduled for June, so I can't put you on the June schedule. And so you probably get right in July. So it's just a process. We've scheduled June already.
But then that means that it's a backlog, because if June wasn't scheduled, I could get scheduled in June.
True, but we try to schedule at least 6 weeks out as well. So, and that's, again, because we want to be able to have a schedule out. We don't want to notify people a week before their hearing. We want to give people time to get prepared.
But right now, it's 4 months out.
Yes, 3 to 4 months. It's generally 3 months, actually,
So
when you did that report.
is this an issue of more people applying, more people that could help us clear out the backlog? What is the issue that I have to wait till July or August now to get a hearing?
I think part of the issue is just, number one, the amount of people who come in and the different types of hearings that we have. We have limited space. We have 2 hearing rooms, and then on top of that, we can only, based on our hearing master schedules and when the departments can come. For instance, Elle and I can only come on Tuesdays because, can only come on Thursdays because they already have hearings on Tuesdays. So, it's an issue of scheduling. We do run a lot of hearings each week. On Mondays and Fridays, we run 4 different types of hearings. The actual tax review board, they meet only on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that is also quite limiting in time. But we try to have at least 15 cases on every docket, and we try to see people as soon as we can. But unfortunately, 3 months to 4 months is probably the fastest we'll ever be able to do it. And in comparison with the red light camera component, red light camera is actually the initial, ticketing, reviewing the video, issuing the ticket to the person, having the person come, identifying who the person is, and then sending them the notification of the ticket. That in itself is a PPA process.
Function.
So once the person gets the ticket, we can schedule them for a hearing between 4 and 5 weeks. And I think that's as fast as probably
No, I'm
we could
okay
do
with that. My bigger concern is the 4 months for everything else.
Yeah, but unfortunately, when you're dealing with taxes and that sort of thing, we do want to give people time to get their paperwork in order. Oftentimes, they come in after going to the Department of Revenue, finding out that they even owe this amount of tax, and then coming to us wanting to resolve it. So unfortunately, that's just the parameters that we're working with.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, though. I will say this. I think, from my perspective, those who work in your department probably know the best ways to resolve this, and because someone on the outside has no idea how to resolve it, but people that work for you know what the roadblocks are, and we should enlist them to help us make ourselves more efficient. That's what I'm suggesting, because you know better than anyone else, because you're doing the systems, and if you have recommendations, you should let us know, or let Christine know, and we should implement them, because the best resources come from the people that work for us.
I think that we work really hard on trying to bring our ideas forward.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I have a follow-up. Administrative Officer, your quote was that Nolan acts and holds departments accountable. Cite examples and how that is reflected, given the irregularity of equity across the leadership tier of government?
So let me see. My first, when we first started, Nolan wanted some structure around exempt hiring. There wasn't any structure. And so he wanted structure through a D&I lens.
He wanted structure.
Through a D&I lens,
Okay.
diversity and inclusion lens.
Okay.
So we, Jackie Linton was the person leading HR and talent, and I was the CIO at the time, and that's where we leaned in, and we wanted to be more prescriptive with departments, and we created the policies that departments have to have a diverse hiring slate, and that departments, a candidate slate, and a diverse interview panel, and we constantly solicit feedback, and when we weren't sure and the engagement wasn't where we wanted it to be, then we took it up a notch and we said, okay, we want diverse folks to review the applications. So it's very iterative, and when there's been an issue, Nolan has had one-on-one conversations with departments. Or posting, for example. We want to make sure all the jobs are posted. So when I first got here, not all the departments were using Smart Recruiters. Now I can say that all the departments are posting on Smart Recruiters. And that's really been how we've been able to support Nolan and in moving
The needle on diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then. I thank you very, very much. Sit with the Free Library.
I will. I made a note. I will definitely meet with them. Thank you.
I won't repeat the obvious.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we'll spend some time with them.
Before April 30th?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Definitely make it a point.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Councilman Don.
Don't go anywhere.
Councilman Don.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a few more questions that I wanted to ask. 2 years ago, your testimony mentioned a new internal management process called Performance Philly. Has that program been implemented?
So that function, the performance management function, was moved to the managing director's office last fiscal year.
Have they implemented it? Do you know?
I would really defer to Angelina, who's leading it. I'm not familiar with it, to be honest with you.
And how many departments right now are using the e-procurement system?
All.
All. That's
the whole
great.
city.
That's great. Good job. That's great.
Yep.
Page 13 of your budget detail, you list a request for $1.398 million in Class 200 for sweep and alarm. Any idea what that might be?
On page 13?
It's page 13 of the budget detail.
Stephanie Tipton, Chief of Staff. That is for a contract with Conduit State and Local Solutions. They help us to process the violations and the money that comes in for those. So that's for that contract.
That's called sweep and alarm?
I think those are the types of violations.
That's okay. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, those are the types of violations. But we can be more
That's fine.
descriptive in there.
Let me, one last question, and I actually really like your mission statement. It says, improve the efficiency and effectiveness of city services. Does the prison system fall under you at all?
It does not. But
It does not.
We work a lot with Commissioner Carney. A lot of the work we're doing with her is in HR. And then obviously, Mark Wheeler, our CIO, works a lot with the prisons on their tech.
And does the wellness program, could that be in any way shared with the prison system?
Absolutely. The majority of the employees at the prison system are represented who do not fall under our wellness program.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But
But for the employees that do fall under our wellness program, they are part of it.
I'm only saying it because we're paying the medical. And the medical 4 years ago, with 8,900 people on State Road, was 46 million, or about 7,000 per. And now with, with 8,900 people there, now there's 4,600, a 47% reduction, and the medical went up to 49 million, or 14,000.
For the employees or for the, okay.
The medical costs through Corizon. And I don't understand how we have a 47% reduction in the prison population, This goes to the efficiency and effectiveness of city services, and yet our costs went up.
Are you talking about the employees or the inmates?
Horizon inmates.
Horizon, the inmates, okay. So, I mean, we certainly could reach out and see if there's any opportunity there.
That'd be great if you could.
Yeah, sure, happy to.
One last question. In improving the efficiency and effectiveness, does it also include cost savings?
I mean, if there's an opportunity to reduce costs, sure.
And you don't have to tell us today, but could you identify 5 to 10 areas of our government where you could identify the top, I'm going to say 10 most dollar productive cost savings?
Yeah, we'll get
You don't
back.
have to do it today.
Yeah.
You can get back to us.
Sure.
Last comment. I know that our office, I think, brought you this negotiations course.
Yes.
So tell us, when is that starting? How many people enrolled? Give me a little background.
Okay, I'm going to turn that over to Dwayne.
Yep. So we actually got that confirmed this week.
Oh, great.
So we'll roll that out June 5th and June 12th. We broke it up to 2 parts because we wanted to be cognizant. We were cognizant of everyone's schedule and prior commitments. And so we have somewhere between 40 to 45 persons enrolled into this training. And so we are looking at senior management level and higher. So we have managers, chief of staff, deputies, directors, and I think that's it.
And it's a negotiations course.
Yes,
I love that. It's great.
yes.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
All right, well, thank you very much. You're all doing a very good job, and thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.